We will call the meeting for the New Ulm Economic Development Authority to order for Tuesday, August 10th. First item, we will waive roll call. We have a quorum present. Second item would be approval of minutes from our July 13th, 2021 meeting and our July 28th, 2021 meeting.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion is carried. Item 3.1, administrative activities for July 2021.
Right, good morning, Commissioners and President Brahm. You have the report before you. I'll just highlight a couple items. Note on the EDA report, revenues were higher in July due to the first half property tax settlement from Brown County. Note under the Homebuyer Assistance Loan Program, 2 loans have been approved and are pending. Under the Get It Ready loan program, 1 loan has been approved and 1 application is pending. And
Can you talk about those just a little bit more so we have more info?
sure, do you have a question
Just for the public,
on the loans that are pending or?
or whatever you can tell us.
The Homebuyer Assistance Loan Program, I think I'm just waiting for paperwork from the city attorney on that and to get a closing date. And those loans will get scheduled for closing. The Get It Ready Loan Program, the loan that's been approved is for $9,000 and the one that's pending is for $50,000. And just waiting for some additional paperwork to get those moved toward closing as well.
Heather, do you know approximately the remaining funds for the down payment assistance at this time? Don't mean to put you on the spot.
It should be
That-
in
that's
the-
my number
let
one
me-
question, you know,
Let me
how much
scroll
money's
down
left?
because it should be in the report here.
Okay.
We have a lot of charts and graphs here. First-time homebuyers, total funds available are $37,475. That does not include the 2 pending loans. I know one is $10,000 and the other, oh no, the other one just closed, $6,900. So yeah, about $27,000 available there, I believe.
Or closer to 20 with the 69 taken off there too. It's just, there is money available.
That already includes the
Oh, it does?
$6,900.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Good. So we still have money. We're heading into fall. And I think the real estate market's still pretty hot. A lot of buyers out there looking for scarce home listings. So, okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Heather?
Heather, I was just wondering, when you receive the payments on any of these loans, does that go into the specific pool?
Yes.
Back into that same pool?
Yes.
Have we started receiving any payment? Because we're not that long into the program, but some people, we can prepay on that, but I don't know if any of those folks that have taken those loans have elected to prepay yet.
On the Homebuyer Assistance
Yeah.
Loan Program, we have not received any payments back to date. They can prepay. There's no penalty for early payment, but no one has started
Okay.
making payments, and we're not 5 years into that program yet where the
Correct.
payments are required, so.
Correct. Okay, great.
I'll make a motion to accept the Economic Development Authority administrative activities for the month of July 2021.
I'll second.
We have a first and second. Is there any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 4.1, Broadway House Door Opener Project.
All right, we talked about this project last month, and we were authorized to go out and solicit bids. This project is to install automatic door openers on 3 entrances at Broadway House Apartments. The estimated cost for the project was $20,000. Bids were solicited from 2 local vendors. One bid was received from New Ulm Glass in the amount of $15,700. And we would like to move forward with that if you approve that bid.
I'll offer a motion to award the bid to Broadway House for a Broadway House door opener project to New Ulm Glass, in the amount of $15,700.
I'll second the motion.
We have a first and second. Is there any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 4.2, EDA claims list through August, or I guess this would be the month of July, right?
Anything there we should be out of the ordinary?
Just a couple items. You'll see the payment to Rooms and Rest for the capital fund project for the new furniture that was purchased for Broadway House. And then there's a bill on there from Sandman Roofing. We needed to install a new rubber membrane roof on the fourth floor deck at Broadway House Apartments because it was leaking. When we did our main roof on the building, we did not replace this small roof. That was not included in that project. And it had kind of reached the end of life and was leaking down into the four-season porch below and causing some damage to the sheetrock. So we had to install a new roof there.
I'll make a motion to approve the EDA August 10th, 2021 claims list.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Is there any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All signify, all approve, let me start again.
It's Tuesday.
Yes, it is. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion is carried. Item 5.1, approve lease agreement for EDA-owned property.
All right. The partners that have Social Inc. Restaurant downtown, they also have a food truck. They're interested in leasing the EDA-owned property located at 326 North Broadway to store their food truck when it's not in use. They intend to park their food truck at that location 3 to 4 days a week, mid-August if this is approved, through mid-November, and then they put it into storage the rest of the year. They don't intend to have the food truck open and sell food at the location, so they wouldn't be competing with the other food truck that's already renting that property. They just need a place to park their truck near their restaurant and plug in their refrigerators when it's not in use. Broadway House Apartments rents that property during the winter for snow removal so the tenants can move their cars. Typically, that doesn't start until mid to late November, depending on the weather, through March. This agreement shouldn't affect the use of the lot by the Broadway House tenants for snow removal. If approved, we would enter into a formal lease agreement with the city and the food truck owners. Preliminary discussions with Social indicated that the other food truck is currently paying $150 a month for 3 months. Or I'm sorry, that the other food truck is paying $150 a month currently. So I, kind of indicated that might be what they could expect to pay for rent, but that the EDA would be setting that amount at today's meeting. And that amount does include utilities. However, the EDA might want to take into consideration the fact that no sales will be generated out of the food truck. They're just using it for storage. So you may want to consider that when determining the rental fee. And you can see the prior history and what we've charged in the past. And then attached is their written request.
How much would utilities run for a month with something like that?
We're paying utilities for the other food truck. It's included in their rent as well. And it's never been over $50 a month. I mean, it's usually $35 or so. But, they're actually using the truck to cook food. I don't know, it would probably be less, I'm assuming, just to plug in refrigerators.
I just noticed that they haven't been there, they're not there every day.
Right.
So just curious.
And they're not generating traffic. It's basically a storage with a plug-in for the refrigerator. So I can't see
Right.
charging the same amount. To me, it's just two different things. So,
Yeah, I'd be in favor of renting to them, but doing it for a lesser amount.
Does our lease agreement stipulate that they cannot sell food there?
We could. We haven't
I
drawn
mean,
that up yet.
I don't know if,
they don't have any interest of that, though?
no, I think this is really a trailer, and I know that they have their own site within the community that they set their trailer up when they're operating. So I don't think it was, for them, it's more of strictly the storage based on the way I interpret it. And that when they're open for business, it's going to be at another location. So I don't know if that's an issue or not, but certainly if we're going to base the rent at a reduced rate, then I think we would want to stipulate that they couldn't probably sell food at this site. And if they're interested in doing that, then that kind of would permit us to maybe renegotiate a lease at that point. If they come back, they'd have to come back and request that, basically, was
First
what.
open Ted's, I talked with one of the folks there, and they had a little interest back at that point. but,
Sure.
To come in there right with Ted's and compete against them, and
Well, I think it's just, it generally brings more traffic when there are more vendors on a particular site, so it could be mutually beneficial, I believe, but that's their kind of business to deal with, or whatever, they can decide that. But I would think that if they were to decide down the road that they want to come back and sell food on site, then we would have to reconsider that, especially if we're considering at this point a lower rental agreement price or whatever, a rate.
one of the negatives is that it's a storage unit off of a main thoroughfare, and what happens if the next food truck comes along, and now we have 5 food trucks sitting in that lot with only one selling food, because it's cheaper than going out and buying a lot at a storage unit to put it in.
Well, I think it's the electrical service. It's
That's
big-
what they need. it
Yeah,
sounds like.
I think
And it's
that,
close to their business.
The
That's what I
convenience,
read in the
the
material.
location is
Right.
convenient for them.
So I'm willing to approve it. I just think we got to be careful of this. I don't want to create a parking lot of storage trucks, I think that wouldn't look good for our community down the road either, so.
When does the other lease end?
Mid-October, I believe.
yeah, they both, basically, the lot has to become available for tenants at Broadway House, so for snow removal purposes, so,
Or
once-
actually, I'm sorry, I think Ted's goes through the month of October.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd offer a motion for $100 for a lease agreement with Social. See if that goes anywhere.
I still think that, all right, I'll second it, so there can be discussion, not that I approve, but I'll second it.
Yeah.
There are utilities being taken out, and so are we going to be, I'm afraid that we're going to be jogging. We get another renter in there who wants it as storage as well. Are we going to, I just think let's just keep it 150 per month. That's just my personal thoughts for discussion.
I'm in favor of the 100, but I would want to stipulate in the lease that they're not able to sell food at a rate of $100. Just,
Then it's just a refrigerator versus cooking hot oil and drawing down a lot more electricity.
correct.
And that would make sense.
And I think we can address any future requests on a case-by-case basis. I agree, we don't want it to turn into a food truck and trailer storage facility. That's not its intent. I think overall, it should be, it's a corner with high visibility, and I think food trucks bring, they're a popular item in the community. I think they've been received well within the community, so I think that overall, I would like to see it being used for that purpose, but I do understand in this particular case, their need to be located close to their current business, and then the need to have the refrigerators plugged in so they're not constantly moving food in and out. They can store their food here when they're not open for business and operations in other locations within the community. So,
What if I amended my motion to 125? That'll make you happier?
split the difference?
And still not be able to sell food? I mean, since
Okay.
that's what the request is, yeah, I'm fine.
Second?
Oh, I'll second that.
Okay, so I think we have an amended motion with a second at 125. Any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. All right, on to other business. Item 6.1, discussion on childcare. We are going to, at this time, just have an open discussion on childcare. I think we can maybe build upon the meeting we had, the evening meeting with the providers and other individuals that are related with working in the childcare area. So anyone wish to open up?
I have a question,
Yes.
and I don't know if you can answer it or not, but they keep saying they don't have insurance. Doesn't the license require them to have insurance?
I think the insurance we're speaking of is healthcare insurance for providers because they're independent business operators. And one of the things we were discussing in the meeting was if we could pool the providers together into a group and perhaps look at providing an opportunity for them to participate in a group plan as a group of local providers.
Who could help us with that?
Well, Chris, did you have that discussion? Take it away, Chris.
So at the meeting, there were two kind of major topics that were thrown out as kind of the bigger issues that I feel we can actually do something about. So one was the insurance, and the second one was subs, finding a way to get subs in the community. So the first one, insurance, as Dan had alluded to, there is a very good possibility that providers in New Ulm could form, for lack of a better term, an association of providers. And Heather and I talked with the city's insurance broker yesterday to see what we could, if there was a possibility of, if the providers formed an association, is there an insurance provider out there that's willing to insure them? He was optimistic, but again, it's really up to the insurance providers out there to see if that's a group they want to insure. So he'll get back to us probably in a week or two, throw some feelers out there and look at some other options to see what's available, to see if that's something we can do. So the EDA, what I would see on the EDA side is that we would help get that association together, and once we turn them over to Justin to help them get on an insurance plan, that would run itself at that point. So in speaking with Justin, they would have to form an association that has a board, and we as a city would have to have one representative on there. And that would that's how they would be able to keep their insurance going. So
I think that they would be a pretty good group to insure, because I would guess a lot of them would be younger adults working in the daycare field. Not all of them. Our home daycare, I think, would probably have a little bit older average, but the centers, I think, would be more younger. So I would hope that the insurance companies would have an interest. But we also, as an EDA, could help offset some costs if we chose to, correct?
if you wanted to, yes.
Because one of the things that they don't have a high salary, so now we turn around and say, yeah, we got insurance for you, but now you got to pay for it. And they're barely making minimum wage or whatever, and they can't afford the insurance. So we would have an option to help potentially.
You could,
Right?
yes.
We could.
Yes, you
That's
could.
a further discussion
sometime-
down
yeah.
the road.
You could put together some type of program where you subsidize it for, 50% the first year, 25% the next year, and
Something
then
like that.
they're
Or
on it
$500
themselves.
a year or whatever. I don't
Yeah.
have it. I'm just throwing that number out. But so could next month's meeting have our insurance provider come and talk to us about that?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'll know something in a week or two to see if if the insurance providers that he's reaching out to even want to go down that road. And if they are, then I can invite them to come and speak on that topic and kind of what the next steps are. There's some positive news on that front, but again, we'll see. It's all in the insurance provider's hands at
That's
this
something
point.
we could potentially move fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And as we told the group, we're not going to sit and talk about this stuff for 6 months. We want to do something.
Yep. And then, one other thing, if the insurance providers aren't willing to do that, we might have to go look at countywide doing it instead of just providers in New Ulm to start with. Do it countywide, because and the more centers that we have involved, the more likely insurance providers will take on that. It's the in-home that that are more of the risk. So we'll have to see what our insurance broker comes back with in a couple weeks. And then so the other kind of big topic was subs and, not being able to find subs and kind of looking at that. So one thing that I've looked into and will continue to look into to get some more solid numbers is just putting together a website where subs can register and providers can log in and find the subs. Say, hey, this is so. There is a website, I think it's called Sitter Cities or something along those lines. And my buddy, when he needed a nanny, that's what he used to find a nanny, and we'll kind of model it after that. And so basically, if I was a sub, I'd go in, I'd register, put in my information. Here are my certifications. These are my hours that I'm available to sub and the days I can do it. And then as a provider, I could log in, see the subs, and contact them if I need something. That's the simple solution. The backside of that, is if I'm an in-home daycare, does my insurance cover subs? That's something that they're going to have to work with. And then potentially doing a program, because if I'm a sub, if I go to Sue's daycare, she needs to do a background check on me. If I go to Dan's daycare the next day, he needs to do a background check on me, which again is fine. That's what they need to do. But is there something that the EDA can do where, hey, if we put together the sub program at the end of the month, the daycare providers send us their bill
Once they
for
do a check, is it like good for a year?
that individual daycare? Yes, but they have to do it to each one.
Think that out, think that through.
Yeah, so and they're used to doing it, or some of them are used to doing it, and I think it's only a $20 background check, and they just need to start the process. From what I understand, is that the minute they get a sub, they say, yes, I want to do a background check. That suffices, and that sub can come in. And then, so we can look at it, and maybe at the end of the month, the daycare providers send us their bills, and we pay the, for the subs that they got to help alleviate some of that burden on their end. So those are things, kind of the two things that we can move quickly on and kind of, hey, here we go. And then the last kind of big one was, do we want to help? Or not do we want to help? We will help someone expand, but do we want to look at getting a building, rehabbing a building, and then putting out an RFP, finding people that want to take it over? There's a couple different options going that way. Expansion is probably the easiest because you're already having a provider that's doing it and you're helping them expand their facility. Us rehabbing a building or purchasing a building and rehabbing it, again, a little more costly, but we then have to find employees to run it, or a center that wants to take it over, or look at, two different in-homes that want to take that building over and run two separate daycares in there. And then I would say this is the last option if it really comes down to it and slots are the issue and we can't find employees, is that the city runs it. The city runs it. So city hires employees, you get a director, a couple staff. The only problem with that I see is it will cannibalize the employees that are already out there, because we're going to pay them more. They're going to have insurance. They're going to have all the things that the daycare providers can't provide. And I don't want to go down that route. So that, again, is the nuclear option, for lack of a better term, at the end of the day. If daycare is such that issue that we can't do some of these things and we just need the slots, that would be kind of the last resort. But I don't want to go down that road until we've kind of exhausted everything else. So that's kind of where we're at.
Well, I took a different lead. As some of you might know, I do daycare for my 1-year-old grandson 2 days a week, and I've been doing it for about a year already. So at 66 years old, I'm a senior. And so I thought, what about a core of senior substitutes? I really took Laura's Filson's talk to us a month ago to heart, because it really applied to my life. And so I called a meeting with Laura Filson, Brown County Human Services person, and Kara Knopf, who leads the senior center, and myself. And we talked about this. Laura gave me some pretty cool stuff. What is a family child care substitute here? She got a whole list on things. And the training, there's quite a bit of training.
Yes, and I think that's something we would need to address too.
Yeah, and I kind of I didn't promise. I indicated that perhaps there was a maybe. What other words can I use like that? That the EDA might be interested in paying for the training. Laura came back after a while and said it's about $120.
Per person.
The training, let me lay the training on you here quick. Pediatric first aid and pediatric cardiopulmonary resuscitation, reducing the risk of sudden unexpected infant death, reducing the risk of abusive head trauma, basics of licensed family daycare for substitutes, and then an optional one which we didn't think would come into play, child passenger restraints, if they were going to transport children. And we didn't think really a senior corps is going to be too interested in carting 10 kids around for 2 hours while the real daycare provider is at the dentist or whatever the scenario may be. So for those others, not counting the car, it's about $120. They do need to go through the training two of them annually and the other two every 2 years. So it would be kind of an ongoing care. Now, we thought younger seniors, to invent a term, would be the group for this. Cara Knopf, who I thought would be the one to broach this to her seniors, she felt that the biggest impediment to them would be that the training, which is all done online, would be a big thing. But Cara says, I and others at the center can help do that if having a computer and comfort in using it became an issue. And what is my other note here? So the seniors know they're not going in to, in effect, babysit their grandkid of sorts for 2 hours. They're going to go into a home that could have up to 12 kids. And that's going to limit how many, I can't imagine an 85-year-old well-intentioned senior wants to go take care of 12 little kids. So it's probably going to be 65 to 75-year-olds. But nevertheless, Carl was optimistic that she could find people to do this. So we've got a few more things to look into yet before this would come as a formal proposal for the EDA to fund anything. But know that what we were thinking is that we could take care of the training.
Did Cara have an estimate of what she thought might be interested?
No, she didn't. She didn't.
Because there are a lot of folks that retire, and after about a year, they're kind of bored. And they want to do something.
Yeah.
And I think there's a market there, Terry. I think that I like this plan. I support it. I hope you continue to move forward on it. I think there's some teeth there. We get some publicity on this, and you need to come up with a creative name, though.
Yeah.
Terry's Toddlers, or I don't know. You got to come up with something.
He's got his hands full with one. I don't know. So I will, if you don't mind, continue getting some more detail on this here, but the concept seems pretty reasonable, doesn't it? It's a group of people that you don't tend to think of as daycare providers, and it all goes back to my personal experiences.
So our original discussion was about retaining current homes that we have and expanding. So what you talked about, Terry, is a retainment issue, in my opinion, to keep folks in their home. And what we talked about earlier also is more retainment. So then we have to look at what Chris talked about as far as expanding. We need more daycare. These other things are going to help keep what we have, but now we need to look at expand. I would challenge this group that not to go little, but to go big. I don't think we need to build a facility. I think we have enough empty facilities in our community that we could find something that we could redo into a nice daycare facility, that the city owns the building, but we rent it to a provider. That's kind of where I would like to go, but I'm not stuck on that 100%. We heard from 3 centers that were here, all 3 saying they were willing to expand. One of them has a current facility that could just simply add on. The other 2, based on what I heard, would have to be a separate building, but they were willing to move and have daycare center number 2. And then we had the lady in the back who'd, quit daycare, but was willing to come back and potentially open up or potentially do something. And we talked about the use of a church basement or something of that center to expand a larger daycare and get, 20 more beds available or spots available. So I'd like to see what people's thoughts are on that.
Well,
and we build homes. We can build a daycare.
Yeah. And I think my takeaway from it was during the course of the discussion, the most critical need has been and continues to be slots for infants. And, you know, the thing that stuck with me was basically a 9-month waiting period, you know, and that's how long it takes. If I remember my biology class, you know, for a baby to be born. So basically, when you first find out you're pregnant, you better start calling daycares to find a place. And I'm thinking, along with everything else you have to deal with when you're expecting a child, finding a place for them to go shouldn't be such a critical matter, but it is. So how do we as the EDA get the most bang for our buck? Well, if you look at the current scheme and the way the laws are set, it really points itself towards the daycare centers. The centers are the ones that are able to have more spots available and ready for infants. So, and I'm not trying to discount the importance at all of in-home daycares. It's just that they're very limited. You know, what did we say? 2 infant spots for your typical daycare license for in-home? That just isn't really going to do it for us. So I agree that our focus going forward in terms of some grand gesture has to be toward looking at what we can do. I believe the expansion of current centers is probably our best and first option, just simply because we know these businesses. They're established businesses within our community, and we know what we have and the folks that are running them. So to me, that's you know, task number one. I've heard already plans about the possible expansion, and I think what we can do to facilitate that should be a priority for us. I'm not saying we should forget about or not focus on perhaps obtaining a building, but let's see what we can do first with what we've already got. That's my thoughts on it. The other thing that I found really intriguing with the discussion we had with the providers, and this is something I would like to see if we could figure out. A lot of this with the in-home daycare comes down to economics. It's what the prevailing rate is for bringing your child into a daycare home facility, and what they're willing to get paid or whatever. And I think from what the discussions I had with both in-home providers and the centers, the reimbursement rate for the daycare assistance that's provided through the county is kind of the benchmark that sets a prevailing rate for the rest of the entire market. And it seems to me, based on what they were telling me at the meeting, and this was kind of the after-meeting meeting, we sat down and visited with some of these folks, that there's a disparity between the centers and the in-home providers in terms of the reimbursement for daycare assistance. The centers get reimbursed regularly through the course of a month, whereas the in-home providers get reimbursed only once a month. And from an economic standpoint, when you're trying to run a home-based business, to only expect a check once a month from the county on those instances puts them at a disadvantage compared to the centers. So I don't know if that's something that could be addressed at the county, because it sounds like the county is the one that disperses that money. And I don't know why they would treat one group of daycare facilities different than the others. So maybe that's something that, I don't know if that's a game changer or not, but I think the economic issue with reimbursements and payments is an important consideration. I think a lot of the in-home daycares leave the business because they can find better economic advantages elsewhere in going outside of the home to work. And so we have to try to level the playing field when we can. And maybe this is one instance where that could occur. So I don't know, that's to me one thing that I took away from that discussion too, is that if we can level that playing field between the centers and the in-home providers, so.
So Chris, what would it look like if we would decide that, yeah, we want to help a facility expand? What would that look like?
That would just be a normal loan that the EDA would do. You can set terms.
Loan? Would it be a
That would-
construction loan? Would it be a?
That would be up to you to determine all the terms. We can put together something where after 5 years, the rest is forgiven if they make payments on time. You can do, like we did with Black Frost, we did 3 years of no payment and then the 10-year starts, so they can get up and running. You can do 0%
Help
interest.
us with some of that to give us some, or not? Is that really not their deal?
We could look to see if that's something they can do, can help with. That's usually not.
Where I was going, some type
Yeah.
of, they're not gonna, I would guess some facilities just don't have the bank account to add a $300,000 addition or whatever it might cost, I don't know. But if we could fund half of it, and in 5 years, if they're still in operation, we forgive the loan, or whatever it is. I mean, that's just a throwing it
Yeah,
out.
I mean, Smith, depending, they have equipment loans or equipment stuff that we can look at. Region 9 is also a resource to help with some gap financing. You can choose to fund the entire project. You can choose to fund half the project, and they have to get traditional financing, and then we tap into other resources to help with the gap. There's different conventions that we can
Southern
use.
Minnesota Initiative Foundation is who we worked with 5 years ago and got our original loan when we did some of the daycare stuff. And there's a Jeremy Andrews, am I saying that right? Jeffrey Andrews. And this is his world, right? I mean, he does daycare. So if we have that insurance person coming next week or next month, could we see if Jeff could come as well? If this is his forte, and talk about letting us know what our options are, so we can kind of, if there's a consensus amongst this group to do something bigger, then, so we have kind of a three-prong approach here.
Well, I think the meeting we had, my hope is that through the evening and the discussions we had, that those folks that were responsible for running the centers maybe have a better understanding today of what we're willing to do. And maybe they're at this point right now where they're still kind of digesting some of that and saying, okay. And maybe they didn't understand how much of a priority that we're placing on it. And I think they know that today, or maybe they didn't perhaps earlier. So I would like, and maybe we have to circle back to that and say, okay, and maybe we do put a program together and say, but I want them to, I mean, obviously, we're not going to move forward until we get them to sign on and their agreement to participate. I don't want to go right to, we buy a building, because I want to give them every opportunity to come forward first and say, this is a plan that we have. And if after a certain amount of time, it doesn't seem like things are materializing there, then we can kind of go and say, okay, the time has come for us to maybe take this on ourselves. I guess that's my thought on it.
My only challenge to you, Dan, on that is if we expand, you're not going to have as many beds as starting a new facility. You're not going to have as many newborn beds, unless it's one heck of a large expansion. But if you open up a new facility in a new building, my guess is you're going to have more beds. Not that I'm saying either one is wrong. I'm a fan of either one of them.
Well, I think we should talk cribs. No, I'm just, yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
And
maybe we're going to end up needing to do both.
And maybe we do. If you think of a 9-month waiting period, there is a lot of demand there that is not being met at the current
How
time.
many newborn beds were in a facility? Somebody remember what
In-home
she
was
said?
2, and you can have up to, well, it's 4 per worker in a facility.
But Kids Excel said they had 20.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
So that doesn't, I mean, it helps, but it doesn't cure the problem. And I
No,
don't know if
no.
we're going to be able to do that, but we certainly should be able to take a pretty good whack at it.
What I would say is let us work with the providers to see what they want to do, because I have nothing to ask Smith, because we don't know if they want to expand, if they want to get a building, because we need the details to ask them, okay, this is what they want to do. Like
Well,
Excel
I'd want
looked
him
at.
to educate us on options, is what I would ask him to do.
I mean, I could literally give you a fact sheet and send that out to you. It's the same
Okay.
the same thing.
That sounds good.
And then we can get down to specifics. Once, if Kids Excel wants to expand, they were looking at doing a kitchen to help them, and then add some space too. So what does that look like as far as a package would go? And we can get those specifics versus, Little Rascals would need a new building because they don't have facility there, and then what that would take, and then we can ask Smith what those options are, and what we would have to do as an EDA to partner with them to get that off the ground.
Most of these groups have their own board. The
I think
centers.
that's what your
they have a
association
board?
would, I think that's what your association would be doing when you were talking about the healthcare option.
That would be, they would address other issues too, but they would be more just so you have that board to
So
fund the
Kids
insurance.
Excel is a community
is the only one.
started childcare. It
They're
has
nonprofit,
the
and they have a
history
board, yeah.
of being a board
To stay and play, they're private
and
owners.
play as a private business. Yes,
And so is Little Rascals.
was private.
Okay.
But they could become part of the association that we're
Yes.
talking with the healthcare. And how could you expand that? Because when you're structuring everything that we're talking about, that's a lot of moving pieces to try to organize all of it. And how could that association that's made up of them help do that? I
And
would think,
really,
I
they
think
could-
that's what would really be
They could
beneficial to utilize
facilitate
their
the
experience.
substitute program
Yeah.
too, under an association, and really, on Terry's idea, be the catalyst for a senior-based sub-program too. So maybe that is the
That's
one
kind of how I was thinking you
overriding.
could structure it a little bit.
Yeah, that might make some of this more feasible. I think my take too, it's not like these centers are in locked up competition with one another. I think their motivation is the care and well-being of our children. So everybody in that sense is on the same page. Because I think one of the center providers said, well, her employees, if they have a count on a particular day that they don't have as many children in the center, one of her people could actually go out and be a sub in a in-home provider. So, I mean, she brought that up. I think they see the wider picture too, like maybe we maybe don't see in the same sense. I think they're looking for it in terms of, we have these children that need to be in a good facility, and we're all on the same page and trying to provide that for them. So maybe that is a good starting point, where if we build or create an association that's run by the parties directly involved with it, we can help be a facilitator of that. And then these other things, as they come along, we can be the one, again, to provide the resources maybe to make some of these things happen, be it education or training, new facilities or expansion of facilities. We can play a role in that. I don't want us to be the main driver of it, because we're not in that business. I want the people with the expertise to really be the ones that say that this is what we need, this is the direction we need to go. And we just be there to act as that resource and a catalyst to hopefully make a lot of that happen as these needs arise, so. But I think we definitely have established the need is there. It's just now, how do we step that forward, and what we do and play in our role to do that sort of thing.
I don't have the answer, and I'm just putting this out as a little thing we could think about. If somebody's looking to expand, could we make one of those downtown? What is more cute than seeing those little kids with the ropes walking downtown, 15 of them? But it brings life and vitality to downtown that's changing. And so just a thought in the back of our head, if such and such a building became open for expansion of Little Rascals or whatever, maybe something downtown would have a bigger effect than just taking care of the kids. It would add life to downtown.
Well, and we have some open buildings downtown, so there's options there. There's a number of options.
We have a lot of options, yeah.
But I'm also, if I'm a business and say I'm Stay and Play, or what the name of that one is, I'd want to know from us, what are you offering? Are you offering 50,000, 5,000? I just think we need to determine what we want to do, so that we can entice them. Because some of them might be right on the fence going.
I think one thing I'd really like to see, you got to understand, in my other life, I deal a lot with housing, affordable housing, And one of the mainstays that we've always used to determine housing needs in the community is a study. I don't know if there's a daycare study that we could look at our community, that we could hire. What are our needs? How many infant shortages, quote, do we have right now? What would be our goal, our stated goal, to provide what that is based on a tangible need? I think everything right now is a little bit abstract. Everybody's talking, and it's a lot of anecdotal information. Oh, somebody told me they couldn't find, daycare for their new infant. Well, I think that's a common theme. I think we understand that, but until we clearly identify it, what does that mean in terms of numbers of cribs, or whatever that we need to provide for our community? Then we can set a tangible goal based on that and say, okay, we need 500 slots, and I'm just throwing that number out. How do we do that? Okay, well, we can take 200 of those slots by expanding existing centers. We can maybe get 100 new slots through in-home incentives, and then maybe that leaves another 200 that we have to look to in terms of getting new facilities. But until we can get sort of a tangible number and a goal put together, I don't know how we can really arrive at an end game for it,
When we did that 5 years ago, when we hired the Smith grant that we got, we hired somebody to do that research. And here's the problem with the research is if you have a newborn and you've heard about the problems of getting daycare, my kid's name is on every single child provider's list there is. So how do you find out that true number? Now, we were able to do that, or at least get a very good guesstimate 5 years ago. We certainly could ask Laura how valid those numbers still are today, or if they're really off center. But it was a hard number to get because we called the daycare. How many requests are you getting? Well, the same daycare, the next one has got the same people calling them, and same with the next one. So we can get a guesstimate. That's what we did 5 years ago with calling actual facilities and really trying to narrow it down. But it was difficult. But we still could take a second look at that study.
Well,
like I said,
I'm
ask-
thinking too, Heather, you did a wonderful survey when we were talking housing a few years back, and we were able to find a lot of really good information. Because one of the questions I would consider, and I've heard this several times too, okay, we have no daycare in New Ulm for our children, so we have to go to Sleepy Eye. We have no daycare for our children in New Ulm. Well, we have one spot available in New Ulm, so we drop one of our children off in New Ulm, and another child goes to Nicollet. I mean, the part of that needs assessment would be, if it were available for all of your children, would you bring your children to New Ulm, and what do those numbers represent? And I think that's an important aspect too, that we learned a lot when we were talking about housing. How many people drive into work every day in New Ulm that would love to live in New Ulm but simply can't? And we've tried to address some of that, but we've got a long ways to go even on the housing thing. And think about that, if we solve the housing issue, that's only going to create more of an issue, I would think, with the daycare issue. So all of those things are interrelated too. But I didn't know if Smith, if being a regional organization, if they've got resources available for making an assessment, or if we could get a grant from them and find, kind of like we did 5 years ago, and make a determination on what our
There's no
needs truly
grants. I
are.
did call there last week, and there is no current grants available.
Okay.
And I asked the question, do you know when the next grant available? And they weren't even sure of that.
Okay.
So we'd have to do it ourselves, which we could do.
Yeah.
We'd have that option.
There is a statewide office that provided some numbers for Brown County and also by city of what they felt the spots were short.
Oh,
So I don't
good.
know when the last year
Could
that
pull
study.
that for next meeting?
I
That
don't
would
know
be
when
a-
it was done, but I've seen it. So we'll just have to see
We're not
when
going
it
to get
was.
exact numbers.
No, we're not, but it gives us a starting point and a basis in which we can then further make decisions and develop directions we want to go.
I wonder if Laura would give us her professional opinion on this as well. I mean,
Right.
she lives and breathes this every day.
Right.
I would certainly trust her judgment on what her recommendation is for a number of baby daycares versus toddlers versus other our other ages.
In the meantime, could we get Chris to check in on the insurance and the subs and the seniors sitters?
Yeah,
And also, just dropped my mind.
it's okay, keep going, Sue, you're bringing us home, I love it.
Oh, I know. And also to try to find out, contact those, both the home and the facilities to see if anybody actually wants to expand. They expressed an interest, but how much of that was just, I'm interested, but actually really interested? Because if we know if they're really interested, we can work on something.
Right.
But their first question would be, what are you offering?
Let's just see if they're interested.
Okay.
Because, so what if we offer, we're not going to hand them $300,000 and say, here, expand.
Because 5 years ago, Kids Excel said, we are not interested in expanding. We have no interest. We can't find staff, we can't do this, we don't have no interest. Now they're interested.
Yeah,
So
time
you're right,
changes.
you're right, they're, it's a
But just to
change.
get something going.
Yeah.
And that's, part of it is when you find the interest, then you can start putting together a program because you're shooting in the dark,
Just have to
again.
be fair, make sure we're being fair.
Yep. I mean, it'll be in line with a lot of our programs, but you can tweak some of the stuff like the interest rate. We normally do between, 0 and 2, but if daycare, like, hey, we just want to do 0%. Or, you can move the timeline, forgivable. You can do things like that. We'll keep it in line. We'll probably keep the cap again at 250 or
Could
3.
we start the process by offering a grant to the daycare centers at this point for them to start getting feasibility information together? Are we at that point, you think? And what would that look like, and how much would that take normally? Just to say, hey, we are serious about this, this is what we're willing to do right now. We will offer a grant to any daycare center that is either in the community or would like to come to our community if you can, we'll give you this grant, and then we would expect you within a certain time frame to come back with a full-blown proposal. But just, that would test the waters, and I don't know, I'm thinking $25,000, I don't know the number. 'Cause
Yeah.
you guys that deal maybe on the commercial building side would say, okay, that sounds like that would be something reasonable.
I think
When it was a
25.
larger amount, and it just really was come up with a plan. Sell us on a plan. I mean, if that includes buying a building or leasing a building or
I think 25,000 might be too much, but again, to just do preliminary stuff, I mean, it should be
I was
10,000.
thinking absolutely the opposite.
Yeah.
because
Well,
going
I
big-
think-
Because you're not drawing full out plans at that point, coming
no,
up
I
with a
would just-
proposal.
It would just be
Just
to,
a preliminary.
Yeah, the prelim
okay.
to
I
do
was
the
we would
proposal,
offer them money
yeah.
so they could,
Do a feasibility
they
study.
could do a
pro forma.
feasibility study on their own and do an assessment of their
Yep.
either current or proposed facilities, because that would take some engineering studies, some maybe architectural studies, and that would offer them the resources to at least make a consideration without them having to expend any of their money. We'd put that money up for them to do the study. And then from there, we can kind of gauge what the interest in the community is, either through existing or proposed facilities as to what they may be looking at. And then we can start building relationships from that. I don't know. And I'll leave it to you, Chris, what you feel is an adequate number
we
to make,
can-
something like that.
We have to make a motion on that if we're going to move forward on that.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
I can do preliminary. We can do preliminary stuff, and then before the program go live, present it to you, and see if that's the direction you want to go.
Yep.
So hopefully by next meeting, but at least by the October meeting for sure, we'll have
Yeah.
something.
And I have a feeling we're gonna keep talking about this for a while. Kind of like COVID. I mean, ain't going away.
But I hope we don't, I'm going to keep pushing this because I don't want us talking about it for 6 months and not doing anything.
I think we're past that. I really do.
I agree. And
We got Terry on now, and there ain't no stopping that guy, so.
Well, and I think we want to make sure he knows that he's got support of the
Absolutely.
EDA to move forward on what you're talking about and what you're doing. Keep going, bring us back info, and
I think that's a wonderful, I think one of the greatest untapped resources we have as a community is our seniors. And if we can engage them in this, it's going to be a total win-win. And think about the generational sort of connections we could make there. I just think it's,
yeah.
has just an absolute wonderful
I love
potential.
the fact that we're taking care of retention and expansion.
Yep.
So I'm really glad that we're doing that in this group, that we're not just concentrating on one, that we're looking at both. Great.
I think are we talked out? Is there anybody else that wants to speak about daycare? Because I know we're all anxious to hear item 7.1 now, Economic Development Activity Report.
So Burning Diesel closed last week on their financing portion, so we will close in the next week or two with our portion of that loan. Working with Roger on finalizing some of the closing documents, and then we'll be ready to go on that. We will, or the co-op, Hanska Co-op, is looking for assistance to help them rebuild. And so our city revolving loan fund won't have enough money in there, so that item will be coming to the EDA to help fund that project. They're looking for about $250,000 and that project, and that is a very small portion of what that project is costing. But we are also
Chris,
working.
how many people work for Hanska Co-op? Do you know?
In town, I think it's between 8 to 12 in town, but I know they have, I think it's 30 to 34 employees total. We are also working with Heartland Consumer Energy to help apply for a USDA loan to help them with the construction as well. And so they are looking to upgrade that facility, rebuild and upgrade. So that'll be a new facility when it's all said and done. Black Frost is looking to close sometime in the next couple months, so that'll be up and running down the road, but we'll finally be able to get the city portion out to them. And then those are kind of the big ticket items that we're working on.
I'll make a motion to accept the Economic Development Activity Report for July 2021 activities.
We have a first and second. Any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. Having no more business in front of us, we are adjourned.